Okay, so the next module we're going to take a look at is Spindrift, which is based on Michael Norris's Spindrift externals library. So the idea of this module, particularly within my context, is for real-time spectral processing, in the sense that I want to be able to feed this module with any sound, but particularly these field recordings from the sample module that we spoke about previously, and pull out resonances to create harmonic and melodic material using bandpass filters. So I want to play those back at random or in a scale, so we have the ability to choose a type of scale and the tonic note that we want to play using Spindrift, and it creates some really nice soaring sort of ambiences that can be used to great effect in, say, drones, in installations and whatnot. So if I just quickly open it up, we have a look at how Spindrift is actually working. We are recording again into buffers, so we have a 5-second buffer that we're using that can then be processed and manipulated spectrally rather than on the time domain. So whereas the sample module was doing things primarily on the time domain, this is all about spectral content and using a buffer to do that. So if we look on the in the center here, we have our parameters, so we can change it because it's granular processing basically with Spindrift. So we can change how quickly each granule is played back, the spacing between them. The duration, the spacing with offsets, the speed, and we can jitter the speed as well, so we can make it stutter a little bit, and we can change the wet dry between the filtered sound, so the resonances that we're pulling out, and the just granular sound. We can choose the filter type. I'm using bandpass because I want to pull out single notes at random, but we do also have the option to use low pass, high pass and comb filters, and then we have different ways that we can play those back. So I'm using random. As I said, I want to pull things out at random based on a scale, but random degrees of that scale, but we can play everything back as a filter bank, so as just like one big messy chord. We can also arpeggiate up and arpeggiate down. So if we want to create some ascending or descending scales using this, it's quite an interesting way. And we'll have a listen to that in just a second. If we keep moving over to the right, we can see our scale filter bank. So this is how we set what scale we are playing and which note is the tonic of that scale or the root of that scale. So we have a whole host of different scales that we can use. We can have octaves, fifths, major, Dorian, so on and so forth. Everything in this list we can use. So what that will do is we can set the root of our scale. So for instance, we have C, and then it will only play the notes within that scale to keep things in key. So it's a really good way of creating these ambiances, but also staying in tune. So we're not playing something in C with this as our drone in the background in F sharp, for instance. So we can use the keyboard to click around and choose, and you can see here these lines represent the frequencies that are going to be pulled out and are going to resonate within that. We can set how many octaves we want to play. I'm setting it to 2 because I don't want anything harsh and piercing, and we can also set the tonic based on its relative frequency, so we don't have to be so specific to what that note is. So say we don't have to be at 440 for A, we can take it off a little bit and just make it a little bit more weird or a little bit more detuned if we want to kind of bring it out of that a little bit. I also have a preset system which is worth talking about because it's a really interesting way of modulating parameters. So I have 2 presets set here, and you can see as I click those, these parameters over here to the left are changing, and actually it's probably better for me to do it like this. You can probably see it clearer. So as I click those, the parameters are changing. You can see the freeze is activating, and then all of these parameters are changing. And this is a really interesting way of doing macro modulation. I've done this with a few of the modules in the wider patch. You'll see this quite often throughout, and it's something that I've used to modulate things using the interactive aspects, which we're going to talk about in just a bit. But basically, if I have these 2 here, and if I come back to where the B patcher is here, so I can add, say, a float number here, and I can quite easily transition just by hitting 1 and then 2. We change preset like that. But if I go for something in the middle and I do that, I can smoothly crossfade between those presets, which is a really interesting way of transitioning between presets and controlling the entire patch rather than just doing each thing individually. We can use the patter storage and preset objects to transition between those, and I've used that a lot in the wider patch, so you'll see and hear that in that audio example. So if I get the audio going again and just give you an example of what these resonances sound like. So if I set this to a scale now, let's say set it to the Lydian mode, I like Lydian, and I'll close this window and get audio going and see you on the other side. We can arp upwards. Just make it so it just hearing the filters. And a downward arpeggiator. And the filter bank is quite interesting as well, particularly if we change to fifths. Mix the sound back in a little bit.